Even the fake divide between, so-called Occupy and the Tea Party, which I think is a false dichotomy. I know people who were part of the original Liberty Movement and the Tea Party when it began. They're good friends of mine. I agree with them on many issues and I disagree on others. It's not about that. And I think young people get it. It's not left versus right. At this point, it's right versus wrong. At this point, it's freedom versus tyranny.
This is Jeff Durkin with We Are Change Connecticut. We're out here at Union Square and we're joined by an activist, Justin Wedes. Justin, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So maybe as a background for people who may not be familiar with your work in particular, what was your main thing of activism for getting involved? What was that one thing for, to start getting up off the couch and start doing something?
Well, for me, I was motivated by a couple things. The main thing is education. I've been an education activist for a little over half a decade now, which isn't really a whole lot of time in the full scope of things, but in that time I have made it a very big priority to focus on the rights of students from the K-12 all the way through college level, and also teachers, and making sure teachers get the resources they need to provide high quality education to all kids, no matter what zip code they're from, no matter what race, ethnicity, background. I believe in free and equal education for all kids. Yeah.
So then maybe more of the transfer to that. What do you think is one of the problems with education in general today, and what do you think is some of the solutions that you have? Maybe if you don't mind sharing those.
Oof, where to start? There are a lot of problems in education today, but there's also a lot that's going right, and I think we have to focus on what works and replicate it, and also focus on where we're not getting the resources that are needed, and where the education isn't matching what kids need, what kids want, and what ultimately is going to empower them to be full citizens, to be active in their own life, in the issues that matter to them and that affect them. So for me, there's kind of two ways to do education. You can educate for people to be obedient. You can educate, in other words, to put people into jobs and place them in these little holes in society where they do these things. Or you can educate to empower. And that second kind of education, which is liberating, which is empowering, is what I focus on. And so when I go around in public schools and I see young people who are bored, who have dropped out, a lot of my work has been with dropouts, which is what I focus on. I taught public school for 3 years. I worked with kids who had dropped out of school and come back to an alternative school. What I see in these kids that have been failed by the system and have failed out of the system is a desire to have a different kind of education than what they're getting. And so when I came down to Zuccotti Park and when I participated in Occupy Wall Street, I saw a lot of people that reminded me of my students. I actually even saw some of my students down there. And it reminded me that what people are lacking in the classroom, both teachers and students, is the kind of learning experiences that excite young people, that get them wanting to learn, and that actually might not even feel like or look like learning in the traditional sense, but are nonetheless educational, inspiring. They push people towards action, And I think now more than ever in my lifetime, we need young people to take action if they want to build a better world for themselves.
And you touched upon something with education. It seems like now, where you mentioned, it's turned more to an obedience, repeating, memorizing, instead of, like you said, empowering people to get involved. Was that one of the things to turn it to getting involved in activism and kind of combining the two to basically help others, whether it's Occupy Wall Street or any other events you've been around?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in school, when I was in high school, I was often called the teacher's pet. I got good grades. I didn't work all that hard per se, but I did what I needed to do, which says something about the educational system, If you can just cruise right through it and not really have to think too hard or work too hard. But nevertheless, and I was class valedictorian, and I felt that I was successful and my parents were happy, but I saw so many kids drop out along the way, and friends of mine who just lost interest, lost motivation for learning. And that's the worst thing. If dropping out is one thing. A lot of kids drop out. It's never a good thing, to drop out, but it's about learning. It's about losing the love of learning, because you can drop out and then go do something incredible. Look at Bill Gates. Look at all of the famous people in history who have been college dropouts or even high school dropouts. But losing your love for learning, losing that curiosity, that's the worst, because at that point there's really not a whole lot that's going to inspire you. So for me, if we have an educational system that just teaches kids to be obedient, to follow the rules, we're going to lose all the artistic, creativity, all of the beautiful things that make our society and our culture so interesting, and just end up with a whole lot of, robotic, well-trained young kids. And obviously any society in history that has become an empire, has become an autocratic society, has always done that through the miseducation of their youth, in teaching young people to be a specific thing that serves the needs of the military, serves the needs of the big industry or whatever it is that has the control over society. And I don't want to see that. I want to see a country with a diverse, educated populace. Not some lockstep, militaristic, nationalistic, state dictatorship. None of us want to see that. That's whether you're left, right, libertarian, socialist, capitalist. I don't care what you are. I think we can all agree that we want to be able to live in freedom. We want to be able to live in peace, right? And you get that only through an educated populace.
You just touched upon something as well that it's interesting. What we try to do also is look past the labels and all that, and basically that's what they want in the way of a dividing and conquering people, instead of uniting on specific issues that we could agree on, instead of pandering and basically focus on the little things, instead of focus on the big picture of getting involved and uniting on these common issues.
No, absolutely, I agree. I've seen time and time again identity politics, race politics, and fake ideological divides being used to corner people off, to divide them from their natural constituencies. And in many ways, that has been a big struggle for Occupy, in that we've been divided by so many different forces. Even the fake divide between, so-called Occupy and the Tea Party, which I think is a false dichotomy. I know people who were part of the original Liberty Movement and the Tea Party when it began. They're good friends of mine. I agree with them on many issues, and I disagree on others. It's not about that. And I think young people get it. It's not left versus right. At this point, it's right versus wrong. At this point, it's freedom versus tyranny. So you got to ask yourself, am I going to get caught up in the ideological divides? Am I going to let the little niche issues divide us? Personally, there's a lot of social issues that I don't care, frankly, if we necessarily agree on. You might take a different stance on a certain issue, but if we're in agreement on the fundamentals about how we need to move forward as a country, then let's work it. Let's work out the differences. That's the only way you're going to have real populism, real social movement that's going to actually change the situation in this country, I believe.
So maybe talk about, for people out there, your recent projects, what you've been doing lately with media or social media or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just recently got back from Turkey, which was exciting. I went after I heard about the Occupy Gezi protest, which began in this little park in the middle of Istanbul, one of the last green spaces. A group of environmentalists and anti-gentrification activists, we were holding that space to prevent it from being developed into a shopping mall. Istanbul already has 93 of those, which is insane. They don't need another shopping mall. But the Prime Minister was intent upon doing this, and in the face of a huge amount of police repression, these young people, and people of all ages really, stood up and said, we're going to defend this space. It's our space. It's public space. And the country really has rallied with them. Many people in the country And it's become almost a referendum on the government itself, on the administration. And I was lucky enough to be in Paris at the time when this all went down, already halfway there. So I said, you know what, I've got to go and experience this. I've got to document this. The mainstream media is not covering this. Where they are, they're skewing it. I personally have been very frustrated with the way that the so-called mainstream media, I put that in parentheses, in quotes, because I think that more and more we are creating media that's shifting the narrative, not the corporations. So the tide is turning. But at this point, really it was the corporate media that was putting a skew onto these things, both domestically and internationally, outside of Turkey, that was really making it difficult for people to get good information about what was happening. And so in that context, I decided I'm going to go there. I'm going to use social media, use the existing networks that we've got with Occupy and other activist groups to disseminate the information in real time about what's happening. Live stream, tweeting, Facebook, blogging, email, whatever, word of mouth, Skype. We would set up Skype calls with students from across the world so they could come in and talk to the young people in Gezi Park. Whatever we can do to subvert the mainstream media and get information directly from point A to point B without that middleman, the better. So I applaud independent bloggers. I applaud everybody who's doing that real, good, conscious work of getting the information out. Without a slant, without a bias, just live, unedited content. And I think that was really the media revolution of Occupy Wall Street. In many ways, it's been the most successful element of Occupy, is spreading those tactics of how we use media, people-powered, you and me with a mic, a camera, a phone, a Twitter account, to bypass a lot of the corporate and state propaganda. Honestly, I've worked a lot with the group called the Yes Men, and what we do oftentimes is we tell little lies. For example, put out a fake press release, other things that should be true, that represent what we believe should be true in the world. And by telling this little temporary lie, what we're doing is exposing a much larger sea of lies. Every single day, if you watch the TV, you're being fed tons and tons of corporate propaganda and PR lies. The entire advertising industry is built upon this notion of trying to fool you into buying things that you don't need, into wanting things that you don't need. And so in that context, what we're trying to do is pierce through that media and create a new kind of media landscape that is people-powered, it's needs-based, so people get the information they need, and isn't deceptive, isn't trying to fool you into buying something you don't need, The last thing I'll say on that is that you have to acknowledge, whether you love TV or like me, you've thrown your TV out the window, looking down first to make sure no one's there. You have to acknowledge that what drives television is advertisement. And so whatever you're watching in those 28 and a half minutes between the commercials only exists to feed the 2.5 minutes that you're getting of commercials so that people will watch them. And I'm not saying there's not great content out there and that there's not great actors and great people who want to make good media, but a business model that's based just upon selling things through advertisement cannot, I believe, create the kind of media landscape that we need to have a more just, a more free, a more sustainable world. So that's what I'm doing.
So just to wrap it up here, just for people out there to check out any of your work, any websites you want to plug to check out your latest work and keep an eye on your latest projects and upcoming projects as well.
That's great. Well, you go onto your computer, go to google.com, the NSA is already watching, and type in my name, Justin Wedes. You can go to justinwedes.com, W-E-D-E-S is my last name. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I blog semi-regularly. I tweet very often. So check me out. Check it out. Facebook, twitter.com/Justin Wedes. And look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Thank you.
I took of them, and this is what it's about. This is, it's not about what the mainstream media is saying. It's about this is what it's about. And I feel like as an activist and as a photographer, I'm in a really good position to bring the truth and the real photos and the real news.
Because without grassroots media, without citizen journalism, we will not be able to take back the media. We have to make the corporate media irrelevant and take things in our own hands. And I applaud your guys' efforts, and I applaud everyone who's doing similar things, because this is really the revolution right here.